You know how fast you were going?
What? How fast you were going?
I don't know. 10?
8.
Be advised, this is an explicit podcast. If you're easily offended, get your panties twisted into a knot. Leave now. Run to your safe space. Get your little cloth for your tears. All the opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and his guest and do not reflect the opinions of any local or government agency. Welcome, MOTORCOP Chronicles podcast. I'm your host, Iceman. Don't know how long this one will be. It'll be as long as it's going to be. I heard about this information yesterday, day before yesterday, and I went and looked some up. It's very little bit of information on it. You'll know why in a minute. I'm sure a lot of people ain't talking about it because what this news article is saying. So we're just going to jump on into it. The headline of this news article from the American Spectator. Okay. Derek Chauvin did not murder George Floyd, and prosecutors knew it. Story was written or put out on the 22nd, a few days ago. My deal is y'all already know my opinion. I called him fentanyl Floyd and all stuff like that. Think the man should have died? No. So I believe Derek Chauvin killed the man? No. I said that before. That he had maybe a little bit, to do with it. I didn't help the situation, but I think this is my opinion only. I think even if they would have left him in the car, which I would have left him in the car, I wouldn't have pulled him out. They could have sat him up on the curb or whatever. I believe he'd have sat there and he would have died regardless. I believe he died of a fentanyl overdose. He had enough fentanyl in his system to kill a horse. So that's what I believe. On this story here, let me see. It's written by Jack Cass-Hill. Okay. It says, thanks to the release of the depositions of a sexual harassment lawsuit, the sexual harassment lawsuit was being brought by one of the former prosecutors, the former Minneapolis prosecutor of Derek Chauvin and his 3 colleagues on May 20th from the death of George Floyd. The depositions were taken this summer in response to a lawsuit by Amy Sweesey. I guess I'm saying her last name right, not sure. A former Hampton County prosecutor. So she worked for the prosecutor's office. She was an ADA or whatever, and she's quit. She filed a sexual harassment suit against her boss, the former county attorney Mike Freeman. Amy is alleging that Freeman engaged in sexual discrimination and professional retaliation. She said whatever Freeman did or did not do to her, however, pales in comparison to what both of them and their colleagues did to the cops they prosecuted and the justice system they undermined. So they did in fact a racist white cop actually murder a man named George Floyd, a civil rights leader in Minneapolis, on Memorial Day 2020, ex Tucker Carlson. I don't believe he was a civil rights leader. I believe he was just a piece of shit criminal dirtbag. Tucker was just talking about this the other day, so made me go look it up. It's on episode 32 on his X podcast. Tucker on X. After documenting just some of the coincidences of the presumed murder, from decriminalizing theft to defunding the police, Carlson had the answer as well. No, he didn't murder George Floyd. Carlson zeroed in on the most critical, revelations, the diagnosis of how Floyd died. Amy, for one, knew how he did not die, as she revealed in her deposition. It's kind of strange how the truth ends up coming out later on, right? That's all I gotta say. I think it's just real strange, you know. A whole bunch of people hollering it, but they, oh no, they this and that. She spoke with Amy spoke with the county medical examiner, Dr. Andrew Baker, the day after George Floyd's death. She says, I called Dr. Baker earlier that morning to tell him about the case and to ask him if he would perform the autopsy on Mr. Floyd. Amy said under oath, he called me later in the day on that Tuesday, and he told me that there was no medical findings that showed any injury to the vital structures of Mr. Floyd's neck. There was no medical indications of asphyxia or strangulation, Amy added. So you're hearing that, right? There was no marks on his neck. I said when I was watching videos, he did not have his knee pressed down hard enough. And if you're talking, you're not being strangled. By day 2, Baker knew the risk involved in telling the truth. Amy continued. He said to me, Amy, what happens when the actual evidence doesn't match up with the public narrative? So here we're going. This is where we go to get this other where the justice system is failing. What do we do when the evidence doesn't match up with the public narrative that everyone's already decided on? Then he said, this is the kind of case that ends careers. Although Amy knows very well why Baker altered his diagnosis, Carlson may not. This story bears retelling in the light of Amy's unwitting confirmation. So, saying that the coroner basically changed his report because he was afraid, if he didn't, the city would burn down. The city burned down anyway, right? As I reported on these pages on August 2021, an exhibit surfaced in the case of Chauvin colleague Tao To. And that's the guy, the last one that just got sentenced. This man got sentenced to 5 years in prison for standing there. He never put a hand on George Floyd. What this fucking judge gave him 5 years in prison. Never put a hand on George Floyd. That should have resulted in a new trial for Chauvin and the release of Tao and the other 2 arrested officers, Thomas Lane and Alexander Kung. The exhibit memorandum was that powerful. It memorialized a November 2020 conference between Dr. Roger Mitchell, former Washington, D.C. chief medical examiner, and several prosecutors. Amy was not among the prosecutors present, nor was Freeman. All but one were from the Attorney General's office. This should not be a surprise. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, whose affiliation with the Nation of Islam cost him a shot at becoming the DNC chair, kept a heavy hand on the case. The AG taking over the Chauvin case was difficult, said Senior Assistant County Attorney Judith Cole in her disposition in the Amy suit, particularly when we had the governor who kind of threw us under the bus. So this is all this is all politics now. What is the Nation of Islam person got to do anything with this shit? Nothing. The memorandum detailed Mitchell's effort to coerce Baker into including neck compression in his diagnosis of Floyd's death, as noted above. Baker conducted an autopsy on Floyd on May 26, 2020. Day after Floyd's death, Baker reported that same day to the county prosecutors. The autopsy revealed no physical evidence suggesting that Mr. Floyd died of asphyxiation. Mr. Floyd did not exhibit signs of, I don't know how to say this word, it's PETECHIAE, or damage to his airways or thyroid brain bleeding, bone injuries, or internal bruising. He had none of this stuff. He had no signs of any of this stuff. 3 days later, on Friday, May 29th, the state filed its initial complaint against Derek Chauvin. According to the complaint, the full report of the medical examiner is pending, but the medical examiner has made the following preliminary findings. The autopsy revealed no physical findings that support a diagnosis of traumatic asphyxia or strangulation. Without a diagnosis of asphyxia, however, the state could not accuse Chauvin, the police officers, of committing or abating a murder in second degree. This is where Mitchell came into play. So here we go. Let's throw the cops under the bus. A well-connected black politician activist, Mitchell boasted of his involvement in Baker's diagnosis to the attorneys present. Their summary of that interaction reads in part: when the preliminary results came out via the criminal complaint, Mitchell found the statement was bizarre. Mitchell was reading and said, "This is not right." So Mitchell called Baker and said, first of all, Baker should fire his public information officer. Then Mitchell asked what happened, because Mitchell didn't think it sounded like Baker's words. Baker said that he didn't think the neck compression played a part and that he didn't find whatever that P word is. Mitchell said, you cannot have petechiae or whatever and still have asphyxia and still have neck compressions. Mitchell first called Baker on Friday, May 29th. He thought about it more that weekend, and on Monday he called Baker telling him he was about to send an op-ed to the Washington Post critical of Baker's findings. In this conversation, the memorandum continued. Mitchell said, "You don't want to be the medical examiner who tells everyone they didn't see what they saw. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room and be wrong." That's what they thought they saw. It's not what I saw, because I always said he didn't have enough pressure on there to choke that man. Because if you're strangling somebody, it's not going to take 9 minutes to do it. Look at a UFC fighter and stuff like that. You put enough compression on the neck, somebody will go out in seconds, not 9.5 minutes. Okay. By that Monday, cities across America had gone up in flames, and none more ferociously than Minneapolis. And the ever thought for Mitchell show Baker a way out of the jam, according to this memorandum. Mitchell said there was a way to articulate the cause and manner of death that ensures you are telling the truth about what you're observing on the body and via all the investigation. Mitchell said next compression has to be in the diagnosis. They set it up to send this man to fucking prison. Late on that same Monday, Baker's office sent out a press release that began cause of death, cardiopulmonary arrest, complicating law enforcement, subdual restraint, and neck compression. See how they fixed that word? See how they threw that in there? Saying basically died from a heart attack or some kind of heart problems, okay? But it had to do with the restraint and neck compression. With a stroke of the pen and the complicity of the prosecutors, Baker turned 4 innocent cops into murderers and justified the self-destructive social revolution that followed. So basically, it sounds like, according to this story and this ex-prosecutor's testimony under oath, that they freaking basically ran these freaking cops up the flagpole. Ran them up the flagpole. It's going on to say I'll post the link to it in the description. It's like I said, you can go read it yourself, take what you want from it. I always thought that they ran these guys, up the flagpole. Except the last guy got 5 years and never touched George Floyd. He was just there, keeping the crowd back. Also, from what I've heard, couldn't find it and read it. I think it was I forget which podcaster it was. It was one of the bigger ones, Matt Walsh or somebody. Anyway, they some of the jurors are able to talk after, if they want to, after all this is said and done. And basically, one or two of them admitted to they didn't find that he murdered him. They found him guilty because basically he failed to render aid to him while he died. Whole case is fucked. Shit ought to be overturned on appeal. The man shouldn't be doing time. Like I said, George Floyd died of a drug overdose from drugs that he put in his body willingly. Derek Chauvin would have just left him sitting in the car after they put him in the car, him hollering he's claustrophobic and all that shit. I'd have rolled the windows down and I'd have left him sit in the car. And if he had a medical problem, call medical. That's where he made his mistake. Because he would have died sitting right there in the back seat. Or they had enough cops there, I believe, if they'd have just sat him up. They could have just sat him up on the curb. He would have died sitting on the curb. They'd have probably still tried to find a way to put him in jail. But I don't think it would have been as easy. So, that's always been in my opinion. Like I said, a lot of people ain't going to like it. Whoever this Jack guy is, like I said, you got one of the ADAs that helped prosecute it, is basically, I believe, telling the truth now. So, you can hear how, this has to be in there. Kind of makes you question the justice system quite a bit, don't it? Lofton wrote in his letter of withdrawal, he said, because I have to sleep at night, he and Amy might have to sleep better had they gone public with what they knew, namely that Chauvin and his colleagues were being tried for a crime they did not commit. Like I said, they ran him up. Maybe, hopefully, he ain't going to do no 22 years for something that he didn't do. Did he make the best judgments that day? No. Like I said, I always say I never thought he killed him anyway. Like I said, he did make some mistakes, but sure in hell didn't make 22 years worth of them. So y'all can take the story for what you want. Like I said, I'll link it in the description below. Like I said in the description. Y'all go. If y'all want any cigars, mypatriotcigar.com. Use my promo code MOTORCOP15. We need MOTORCOP merch. Go to eBay store or the website. Click on there if you want extra episodes, pictures, videos. Also, some other stuff you can try. It's free for 7 days. You can check that out on the Patreon. And until tomorrow, Monday night, midweek news. All three of us going to be here. Stay safe. Watch your back. Watch your partner's back. Smile. Because the Iceman could be behind you. Remember, we are lions, king of the jungle. Ain't no sheepdogs.
Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yo, I got a lot of shit to say, so I'ma do this every day. I'll be writing things